Welcome to the Infertility Podcast. I'm Candace.
And I'm Daniel. Grab a biscuit because we've got the tea on all things infertility.
If you're enjoying the podcast, please give us a 5-star rating and leave us a review. This helps others find our podcast and get even more information about coping with infertility. Also, if you'd like to stay up to date with our story, you can follow me on Instagram at Operation Baby Bump.
Have a great topic for our podcast? Email us at thevanwades@gmail.com.
Hey guys, welcome to episode 3.
Hello, America and England and Australia.
You know what? We've got listeners in like Hawaii and
What is
I know that's America. Don't
Yeah, I
like,
know.
I'm not the girl who's like, if we had more maps, you know.
the
Miss
beauty
America.
queen, yeah. What do they say? Aloha? Is that what they say in Hawaii?
Aloha.
Aloha.
Yeah.
All right. Well, that was interesting.
That is your geography lesson for the day.
If only we had more maps
We
in school.
actually have listeners in like China and Australia.
G'day, mate.
That's pretty cool, I think.
What do you think of my Australian accent?
It needs some work,
Yeah.
I think. So...
Whose birthday is it tomorrow?
Oh, it's mine.
Yay, happy
Yeah,
birthday.
yeah.
39?
No. I for a while now, I've been thinking that I'm turning 35, but I'm actually turning 34.
Oh,
which is
show
good.
off. Look at you.
Yeah. It buys me some time before I actually have to turn 35, so that's good.
It's at least a whole year.
It was a good realization to have to be like, wait, I'm not turning 35, I'm turning 34.
Yeah.
So that's good. 34.
Doesn't that mean when you hit 35, you start to check a different box and like census and things, like you're in the 35 and above bracket?
Oh, is it?
I think so, yeah.
Oh.
I feel like I've changed. I've gone right from my previous box to a new checkbox. Like, because I'm 35. So.
Yeah.
You're so young.
Yeah.
So pure.
So young. Not really.
So fresh and so clean.
Old and crusty. Yeah, guys,
Yeah.
I've got a massage planned for tomorrow.
What time?
12:45.
Nice.
And it's going to be great because I'm long overdue for a massage. My body is
Such a
in
first
shambles.
world problem.
I know,
I've got to
but
get my massage.
it's
You know,
not-
in England, no one gets massages. We just rough it.
I don't
you know?
care.
We're like, oh no, dagger in the arm, pull it out, bit of bread, slap it on there,
No, y'all are a
fixed.
bunch of hypochondriacs over there.
No,
Yes,
ma'am.
you are.
No, ma'am.
Good night. Yes, you are. I am the type that needs massage as part of my wellness routine, just like chiropractic care, just because I have jankety hips and they go out of line. I also
Thanks a lot, Disney.
Yeah, I blame Disney.
Background
but I
on that's
have-
because of the dresses. They're heavy dresses.
Yeah, nobody knows that.
Oh, for real?
So we're just going to move on from that.
Right.
But I have sciatica, and so the adjustments help a lot, but massage is also another key to just me feeling good physically. So it's been a need for quite a while, so I'm really excited about that.
It's either that or cocaine, and you chose correctly.
Right.
Because your cocaine habit is out of hand.
Right, exactly.
Way out of hand.
Exactly. Oh my gosh.
I'm so fed up of waking up in the morning and you're there eating your cornflakes and you've just got a bunch of powder on your top lip.
Yeah.
It's embarrassing.
I know. Anyways, back to real life. I am excited about my massage, and then we
Good.
have a doctor's appointment. And then we're going to my
With
favorite restaurant.
Dr. Dre? No? Okay.
No, not with Dr. Dre. He was busy. We're seeing another doctor tomorrow. So, it's going to be a good day tomorrow.
Busy day.
By the time you listen to this, it will be yesterday we're talking about.
Ooh, freaky.
How weird.
Time
How
travel.
strange, yeah. We're just traveling in time. Back and forth. Anyways, and if you're listening to this in a year, what took you so long?
What took you so long? Put a lot of effort into this.
Anyway, I've received a lot of messages over the years, I would say, asking me, what do I do now? Like, I just had another failed transfer. What do I do now? And I'm no expert on this, certainly, but I have had 3 rounds of IVF, which I know is not as much as a lot of people. Mm-hmm. But from those 3 rounds, we've had 5 failed transfers. And I guess I've just been through a lot of the testing that we're going to talk about. So I think by having been through all of that stuff, I can kind of provide some sort of insight onto what these tests are like in a way, and what the procedures are like too. Because you can read about them, but like that's not real life most of the time.
No, it always gets very sciencey when you read about a test.
Yeah.
You know, we need to coagulate your grow-nose. And you're like, I'm sorry, what?
Your grow-nose?
Yeah, no, it's way scientific.
Oh, Lord. Anyways, so in this episode, I wanted to switch things up a bit. We generally talk about things in this podcast that are geared towards the community that we're a part of. So women who have already been through the thick of things. I just crossed my legs and like brushed his leg.
Stop it.
And he like crossed his legs the other way. Like, how dare you touch me?
She's got Grinch slippers on and she keeps rubbing the Grinch slippers on me. Get gone. Get gone.
Anyways, what I was saying is generally we're talking to the women who've already been through a lot of infertility crap, and we're talking about kind of things that are more relative to them. But today, at the beginning of this episode, I kind of want to talk to the noobs.
The noobs.
The newbies to infertility, and just kind of give a rundown of, I guess, the intro to infertility. So when you find yourself going into the fertility clinic and they're kind of running all those preliminary tests, like, I didn't know what to expect when we started, all of that testing. I just kind of was like, okay, I'll do what you say, but I didn't really kind of understand what things were until they were actually happening to me, I guess.
It's like, at that stage, it's the one-size-fits-all testing, right?
Right.
We're gonna try all these different tests, and a vast majority of them could be useless. But let's just see what the results are.
Right, exactly. Preliminary testing for women. In my opinion, they don't do enough preliminary testing for women. I think they should offer a wider range of testing and just offer them. If there's something in your medical history that you think might be of interest to you, they should inform you of your options.
There's different levels, right? We've been to 2 doctors. One doctor did what they called their standard amount of testing.
Right.
Whereas our second doctor did additional testing that our initial doctor wouldn't have even thought to do.
Yes.
Which one was successful?
Right.
The one who did the most testing, right?
I'm just the type of person who likes more information. Like, I need all the information, which is why I'm a really bad storyteller, because I give people more information than they want.
No, do you know why you're a bad storyteller? Because you don't develop the story.
Because I have anomia and I can't think of words.
So she'll come home from work, everyone, and she'll be like, oh my goodness, you've got to hear what happened today. And then she'll start telling the story, and then you'll see her looking into her brain with her eyes as if to say, did that happen before or after this point? So I'm like, skip to the end.
Yeah, but I think that's an age thing.
No, you've been doing it for 10 years.
No.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
I think I get that from my mom.
And your Grammy.
And my Grammy.
Yeah.
Because I like to give people all the details. So I'm like, okay, I was sitting at my desk and I had just eaten. So my container was off to my right.
Yeah.
And then
How does that help me?
I just like...
Isn't this a story about losing your keys? Please, continue.
I just like a lot of information.
Yeah.
So when it comes to my health, I like more information than I probably need. I think people should have the option.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I think that's also comes down to the fact that when you're starting this process, you're scared to ask for anything other than what's recommended.
Well, and you don't know.
Because you don't know, right? But if you're also made sometimes to feel quite stupid, right? If you read something and it's been successful for someone else and you say, hey, I've heard about this, I'd like to do this.
Oh, yeah.
You're made to feel
that
like...
old chestnut.
Yeah, no, that's not what we do. That's not standard practice.
Well,
so I
and
think
you
that,
go
that comes with
in...
it.
So I think of the time we went in, we were virgins to the whole infertility game, and they say, okay, we're going to draw your blood. And you're like, okay, cool. Like, this is standard practice. This is what you need to do in order for us to start IVF. Cool. Awesome. You don't sit there and go, well, are you sure you're running enough tests? Are you sure? You don't think about things like that, which is why we're here.
Thank you.
For you. My point in wanting the option to have more testing done is that we shouldn't have spent over 60 grand in fertility treatments and medication that we didn't need if we would have had the option to do more testing at that time. Okay? It's a shame. I don't want to keep harping on about the past and woe is us and oh, all the money, blah, blah, blah. But I hope and pray that someone out there learns from our experience.
100%.
And we can't go back and change things. Daniel and I have made peace with what's happened. We are using our lives moving forward to help inform others, whether it's just in passing conversation, whether it's through this podcast, whether it's through my Instagram or our website, the Infertility. You can't go back. So if someone out there hears this and goes, oh, I should probably, I've got a history of X, Y, and Z. I better just ask for that particular test just to be sure. Because they'll ask you your medical history, but they asked me mine and they didn't they didn't think that endometriosis was an issue.
Yeah. 100%.
So that's unfortunate.
And just to say, we have let those things go. We've moved on from that. But two things. We should definitely put a negative review on Yelp for our old doctor's office. And then the second thing. Do people still use that?
I don't know if people use Yelp for fertility clinics. That's more of like, what restaurant should I eat tonight?
Do you know what?
I don't know.
Delicious. And then on July 16th, we're going to rob a bank to pay off the 60 grand. How about that?
Right. I feel like screening for endometriosis is so obvious in the beginning. And I'll get to how this is done later on when I get to the in-depth testing. Having a laparoscopy right off the bat is not ideal. At least offer people the option of... Okay, endometriosis is a major cause of infertility, though most clinics do not agree with that, which is just shocking and appalling to me.
That is like calling the earth flat.
It's so absurd.
Yeah, everyone knows Earth's a trapezoid.
It's so absurd. Okay, I'm going to move on.
But when you say screening, we found out you had endometriosis through a blood test, right?
Well, it was a very complex blood panel.
Yeah.
And there was an expert interpreting those results.
Yeah.
So that's unique.
Yeah.
And there is a better way to screen for endometriosis, which I'll talk about later on. But give people the option right off the bat. Because what if they don't even need IVF?
Yeah.
Well, that would be devastating to the clinic, wouldn't it? Because they wouldn't make all that money.
You know what really gave me a clue that you had endometriosis was those commercials. Where the person's in the doctor's office and,
yeah,
and they're saying, tell her about the pain quickly.
Yeah.
And she's like, oh, it burns when I pee, or
No.
I've got hemorrhoids on my toes. And
No.
things. I don't know. It's something like that.
Ay,
But
Dios. No. Yes, that is. I think a lot of women have painful periods, and that's probably their only symptom of endometriosis, and they just never think that
No.
that's endometriosis.
I said for so many years, you've got endometriosis, and you're like, no, it's worse than this. It's worse than this.
I know. And the thing about it is that my information came from what happened to Elena, my cousin.
Yeah.
We have an episode on that.
Season 1.
From season 1. Go check it out. But what happened to Elena, she had endometriosis in stage 4, so it was so bad.
Yeah.
And I guess I was comparing myself to that, thinking, oh, well, mine isn't that bad.
Yeah.
But it's the spectrum. It's stages. So, and there is silent endometriosis as well. So you could have no symptoms of it and have it. But let's move on.
Yes. I could talk about endo for ages.
I could too. And don't worry, if you too could talk about endo for ages, we will be doing a follow-up endometriosis episode.
We are?
This season.
Cool.
Yeah, you're not invited.
I'm not in it. But I just said I could talk about it for ages.
Yeah. So Elena, I'm teaming up with my cousin Elena again, and we're going to talk about it.
If it wasn't you, I'd have married her.
Oh.
What?
All right, so let's talk about some of the basic female fertility testing. So when you go in, you're like, I can't get pregnant, blah, blah, blah. They're going to do...
That's exactly how it goes.
That's what I said.
I can't get pregnant.
Can't get
blah,
pregnant.
blah, blah.
Blah, blah, blah.
Fill in the blank stock.
They will do a karyotype, usually. This is a genetic test they do through blood work. It can identify genetic abnormalities that may be of concern, and also whether or not you're at risk for having children with genetic abnormalities. They'll also test your hormone levels via blood work. So your LH, your luteinizing hormone, your estrogen, progesterone, prolactin, your AMH, which is your ovarian reserve, the androgens, testosterone, etc. They will probably do a physical exam, so make sure you landscape that day. Because let me tell you something, you do not want to roll up in there looking like Chewbacca down there.
Yeah, or like you're sitting on Tina Turner's shoulders.
You're so stupid.
Yeah, you don't want to.
Ay, caramba. Yeah, so they're probably gonna feel your boobs, fill you up a little bit.
Yeah, at least buy me dinner.
Probably do a pelvic exam and potentially an ultrasound, most likely, because they're going to want to see guana. They're going to want to see your uterus, your ovaries, your lining, and they usually do this type of exam and the blood work on a specific day of your cycle. Another thing they'll probably do, in addition to the pelvic exam and the ultrasound, is they'll probably do an HSG, which is a hysterosalpingogram, that can see if your fallopian tubes are open and clear. Now, that's usually the primary focus of this test, but it can also look at the shape and the condition of your uterus. In this procedure, they'll insert a catheter through the uterus, and they'll blow saline in there up through the uterus, through the fallopian tubes, and if it goes through the tubes and out the tubes, then you're clear.
Is there someone on the end of it literally blowing saline?
No, but they can see what's going on because you have like an X-ray machine above your belly. So there's usually a couple of people in the room.
When did we do that? The HSG?
We did
the
this...
HCG, right? Is that what it's called?
HSG, yeah. We did this before we started actual IVF.
Was that the painful one?
It's a little uncomfortable.
You've done this twice,
I've
right?
done this twice.
Twice.
So you will cramp a little bit.
Yeah.
It doesn't hurt really bad, but it's just, you'll be a little bit crampy.
And this, I wasn't allowed in the room for this one,
Right.
was I? That's right, because when you were getting this done, I was providing a sample. Is that right?
No, you were not providing a sample. I drove myself to that appointment because I'm an independent woman.
Okay, yeah, I remember. I don't remember.
When I first had an HSG back in 2013, before we did our IUI, they just looked at my tubes, and at the time, I mean, I didn't know they weren't doing a completely thorough job because I had never had that procedure done before. Mm-hmm. So they just looked at my tubes. Well, when I had it again in 2017, before we started IVF, I remember him looking at my tubes first, and then he was like, okay, can you tilt your hips? I want to look at your uterus. And I was like, oh, interesting.
This didn't happen the first time.
Right. So he looked at my uterus, and then that's when he found the polyps.
I remember.
So sometimes the HSG can lead to a hysteroscopy. And the hysteroscopy is an actual surgery. They'll put you out into a delicious anesthesia nap, which is my favorite.
What a nap.
Man, I haven't had one of those, I guess, since January.
They are
that
fantastic.
That was a great nap. Ugh,
yeah.
I've only
ever... How many times have you been put under anesthesia?
A lot. In the
I
past...
think twice in my whole life.
The past couple of years, I've had 2 hysteroscopies.
Yeah.
I've had 3 egg retrievals. My laparoscopy.
Yeah, but they don't put you under. You're awake.
4?
The egg retrieval, right?
No, you're not awake for that. Heck no. Guys, this is what I live with. He's been through 3 egg retrievals with me, and he doesn't even remember that I was taking an anesthesia nap.
I guess it's because
Unbelievable.
Yeah, I know. I think because I'm not in the room, I don't experience it. I just drive you home.
Do you not remember me being wheeled to recovery, and you have to sit there till I wake up?
Oh, when the fire alarm went off. I remember that.
That was my second hysteroscopy.
That was...
After my second hysteroscopy, I woke up in recovery, and I was still very, very loopy. And the fire alarm went off.
Jeez.
And they, transferred me to a wheelchair, and we're all wheeling, they're wheeling me out of the building, and I was like, save the embryos!
Forget me, get the embryos!
But it was actually just the people doing construction outside. They blew smoke into the building,
Wankers.
which anyway caused the fire alarm to go off. So in a hysteroscopy, back to us getting back on track, this is a surgery. So they're going to put you out. They're going to go in through the vagina while you're asleep. And I've actually heard that some clinics use a local anesthetic, and people are awake for this, which this is medieval torture to me. And they'll do something to the uterus based on what the problem is. For me, it was polyps, and my polyps were so bad, and there were so many of them. They were on top of each other. They had to just basically give me a DNC and scrape everything out, as opposed to clipping them off like they usually can do for polyps. Sometimes they'll remove scar tissue if that's the issue in there. But this is a really important procedure because, as you know, our uterine lining is what the embryo will burrow into and grow from and live in for the next 9 months.
9 months. Yeah.
So there's also a sonohistogram, and these are just basically an HSG that just combines saline injection and an ultrasound. So it's basically the same thing without an x-ray. And I've had one of those as well. So in addition to all these preliminary testings, they will ask you, to fill out your paperwork. They'll ask for your family history. Not sure my clinic asked me that, if they were just going to disregard it anyways.
Apparently they did.
They will ask you about your medical history, so surgery, miscarriages, etc. medications you're taking, if any. Also, any nasty habits you have, like smoking, stop it.
Or rollerblading.
Or excessive drinking. They'll also ask when your last period was. And me being the freak that I am, I had offered them my extensive years of history of cycle tracking.
The annals of your
I know.
fertility.
I was like, do you want to see my Glow app? Because I've been tracking my, cycle for the past how many ever years. So I have a lot of information on when I usually ovulate. And they're like, nah. And I was like, okay. This is kind of a lot of important
this
things.
could help.
But okay. So they didn't need that information. Now, as far as men are concerned, there are less things to test because, well, you guys just have a couple of dingleberries and a stick.
Whoa. A dingleberry means something different.
Yeah, but I'm calling your beans dingleberries right now.
Miss sausage and beans.
Yeah.
Miss sausage and eggs.
Yeah.
Oh, I want breakfast now. Weird.
That is a disturbing...
I never want breakfast,
there.
but now I want a sausage sandwich.
Okay. So men are also going to go through the karyotyping. They are also part of the puzzle if they're going in with a lady to do IVF. They will do the blood work for testosterone levels, although they say that 97% of infertility cases are not affected by hormones in men. So that's good, I guess. Semen analyses are pretty standard testing for men. They are going to look at your morphology, so the appearance. Is there a head? Is there a tail? They're going to look at count and motility, so how it moves. Is it fast? Does it go around in circles?
Does it lift weights?
Right.
Do you even lift, bro?
Does it dance?
Yeah. What sort of form does it have when it's doing a sperm push-up?
Exactly. A sperm push-up. They do not look for DNA fragmentation of the sperm in this basic testing, and I'll get to that later on, but that is not part of a preliminary semen analysis, to my knowledge. They may do a physical exam to see if there are any varicoceles, so these are abnormal veins in the testicles.
They didn't do that to me.
No, they didn't.
They did not give me a physical exam.
Yeah, but sometimes they will. And I think one of the things about plumbing issues,
Nice.
I would say, like logistical issues, so things that are caused by varicoceles are like blockages. I think that a lot of those things are prior knowledge coming into IVF because you would know you have a lot of pain because the varicoceles can cause a lot of pain in the testicles. Like sharp pain, I assume.
Really?
From what I've read. And these are things that would probably be prior knowledge as a product of your experience with intercourse. So if you cannot, perform in a way, and if the sperm cannot get to where it needs to go, those are things that would be obvious to you. So they may not check for those things because I guess they assume that you would just tell them that those things happen.
Oi, doctor, me things can't get to the other place.
They'll also perhaps test for anti-sperm antibodies. I don't think they did this with us for preliminary testing. I did in fact ask for this as we started to experience a lot of failures. And I did ask about the sperm DNA fragmentation. I asked for anti-sperm antibodies. And this is where men will actually produce antibodies against their sperm. So it'll attack the sperm as it's leaving. And it'll basically be neutralized. So when it gets to the egg, it does nothing. Like it just dies, I guess.
Rest in peace.
Again, like for females, the clinic will ask the male his medical history. lives, current medications, nasty habits, family history, etc. Now, that's all the preliminary testing they usually do. Things differ from clinic to clinic, of course, but in my research, this is typically across the board most of the testing that they do. Now, the detailed testing I'm about to talk about is done when you either have a transfer fail, or it's not even right after a failed transfer, but after a number of failed transfers. The first one I want to talk about is the ERA. Do you remember us doing that, Daniel?
I do not.
This test, oddly, was actually offered to us after our first failed transfer, only because I was asking for more testing. He mentioned the ERA and said he didn't really recommend it until after 2 failed transfers. And I said, well, can we go ahead and do it now? Because at that point, we had 2 embryos left. We had only had 3 to begin with. And by my calculations, I mean, I'm not good at math or anything, but if we would have waited till 2 failed transfers, that means we're doing the test with 1 last shot at a baby. And to me, that was not good enough. So I was just willing to go ahead and get that test done now. And this test is suggested for women who have recurrent implantation failure. When high-quality embryos have been transferred, there is generally a reason why those precious, high-quality, normal embryos are not sticking. The ERA is an endometrial receptivity array. I've also heard it referred to as an assay or analysis, so all of those terms are correct. This test identifies your receptive window for embryo implantation. So like Daniel said earlier, we did this test and we found out that I was pre-receptive.
Which basically meant that we needed to give you an extra day before we transferred, right?
Right. Extra day of progesterone. So the receptive window is generally cycle days 19 through 21, but 3 out of 10 women actually have what's called a displaced window of implantation. And that means that their window is either before that 19th day or after the 21st day. This window heavily relies on progesterone levels, which is why I had to do 7 days of progesterone before my transfer instead of the 6, which is their typical thing that they do for transfers. So what is this procedure? Well, I'll tell you. Thank you for asking. Many of you listening might have already had this done. And if you have, you're probably crossing your legs and like clutching at your panties right now.
Gross.
Yeah. It's painful. I'm not going to lie. And you are awake for it, most likely. And for the love of God, please take 800 milligram of ibuprofen before you go in. So they're going to insert a speculum into your vag. They're going to open it up, open the cervix. Then they're going to place a catheter through the cervix and up into the uterus. Now what this catheter does is they're going to scrape the side of your uterine lining, your uterine wall, and they're going to suck out a bit of tissue.
Is that the noise it makes?
Yeah, I think.
You hear it go.
I didn't hear anything because I was like squeezing the hand of the nurse. Like I could hear the sound of her bones breaking. Right. It is painful, but it only lasts for like 5 seconds. So don't worry.
Deep breath.
Also, how I looked at it was I was thinking the whole time, labor's going to be worse than this. So I can do this.
Fair. Yeah.
And if you look at it that way, if you look at everything that we women have to go through and you just think labor's going to be worse than this, then you can just use all these things as practice.
Like any pain in life now, you're just going to go, labor's going to be worse than this.
Right, exactly.
You stubbed your toe. Labor's going to be worse than this.
You just gotta, it's all about perspective.
Yeah, labor's worse than
a paper cut.
Yeah. Paper cuts are painful.
Yeah.
Come on.
So, in addition to the ERA, after failed transfers or failed pregnancies, you can opt to do a miscarriage panel. By the way, do you know what this test is actually called, Daniel?
The "Where'd you get to, baby?" test.
That's a good guess, but it's actually called the recurrent miscarriage / fetal demise profile.
Well, that's horrible. That's worse than my joke.
A fetal demise. Could they not have thought of anything better than that? I don't like it. So this test looks at indications of blood clotting disorders, autoimmune factors. It checks for evidence of lupus anticoagulants, and these are antibodies that attack healthy cells and healthy tissues instead of like fighting off disease. It also checks for mutations in the MTHFR gene. This can impair the body's ability to absorb folic acid, which is really important for pregnancy. So those are the key things that this panel tests for. And this is a blood draw, simple blood draw, and the results are usually available in 5 to 7 business days. I've actually had many friends on Instagram that had this panel done, and they learned some valuable information. Either they had this blood clotting disorder or they had the MTHFR gene mutation.
Yeah.
They were able to correct those things and go on to get pregnant. So whether they were put on blood thinners or a folate instead of folic acid, things like that, I believe, are corrective in helping those women get pregnant.
Our doctor's office wouldn't do this, would they?
Exactly. This is something I asked for multiple times. What
was their rationale behind not doing it?
They said they don't offer it anymore.
But did they say why?
They just said it wasn't a gold standard. And to me, what is a gold standard anyways?
Well, if you go back to the 1980s US, the gold standard meant that for every dollar in circulation, there was gold, physical gold, AU, to match up with it. Mm-hmm. Gold standard in terms of medical, I don't know, wouldn't know. Yeah.
I just think if your patient's asking for it, it's a simple blood draw. It's a lab order. So you can't even do that for your patient who's asking for it multiple times. And after 5 failed transfers with PGS normal embryos, this doesn't usually happen to people. So I don't know why they wouldn't do it for me. There's actually also a fetal tissue karyotyping option for women who have had a D&C after a miscarriage, and this checks for genetic abnormalities of the fetus. So this is probably something you may want to consider doing if you've had an early pregnancy loss and you didn't do any sort of genetic testing. Maybe you got pregnant naturally. So this might be something of interest to do. Now, let's get to one of the more exciting tests, which I alluded to in the beginning about endometriosis screening, and now I want to talk about it.
Woo!
It's called the Receptiva DX. Doesn't that sound like a contraption of sorts?
No, it sounds like a band, like a punk band. We are Receptiva DX.
So this is the first test of its kind, and I'm not talking about immunology testing. I'm talking about this is the first test of its kind to detect endometriosis without surgery.
Awesome.
This test looks for BCL6. So that is B cells, and high levels of these proteins cause inflammation in the body. This is another endometrial biopsy. So like the ERA, they will scrape off a bit of your lining and send it off for testing. But the good thing about this one is that you can do this test if you suspect you have endometriosis with your OB/GYN. So they can usually do this in your OB's office before you even get into fertility treatments. If you suspect that you may have it, I recommend doing this before you do anything else, just because if you did have endometriosis and you got it resolved, you could probably get pregnant on your own and not have to go through fertility treatments. Now, that's not going to be the route for everyone, and that's not going to be true for everyone, but it is certainly a possibility.
I would say that it is going to be helpful to more people than we realise.
Right.
Because endometriosis seems to be the link to unexplained infertility more often than not.
Right. It's true. And this test actually says their tagline is helping women with unexplained infertility.
Yeah.
And so they're able to detect this quite well. And these results are able to be available to you within 3 to 4 business days. So that's a pretty great turnaround. And when I asked my clinic if there was any way that they could screen or figure out if I had endometriosis other than having to have surgery, they told me no such test even existed.
They're phonies.
Well, that wasn't true because actually we live in Charleston, South Carolina. This test, the Receptiva DX, was actually developed in Greenville, South Carolina, which is a stone's throw. Not really a stone's throw. It's like 3 hours away. But it's in our state, okay? So you'd think that news about this would travel to local areas.
Yeah.
And it has been around since 2017. So before I even asked for it. So it's not that it wasn't around when I asked for it. It was. They just didn't know about it.
Well, they choose to not believe that endometriosis has any impact on
And that's
fertility.
probably
And that's what it is.
a huge factor. Probably so. Yeah. So those are some pretty good tests that you could do when things are not going right. Another detailed test that you can have is the immunology testing. And we did discuss this in more depth in our first episode this season. So go have a listen to that if you haven't yet. But just to recap, this type of testing was the last resort for us, basically.
Yeah.
It encompasses a wide range of panels related to the immune system, so natural killer cells, blood clotting disorders, etc. And Daniel and I both had blood drawn.
A lot of blood.
I had a lot of blood drawn. You had a
For
lot.
me, it was a lot. It wasn't a lot compared to you, but...
Yeah, you had about 9 vials. I had about almost 30.
I don't think it was even 9. I think I had...
Yeah.
Was it 9? I thought it was less than that.
I think it was about 9. And this testing, for this, you'll have to go to a specialist in reproductive immunology, which can be quite costly. Also, it's not, I'm going to say, very convenient because there aren't a lot of reproductive immunologists in the U.S.
On Earth, really.
On Earth. And there's one less now.
Rest in
Dr.
peace.
Braverman, rest in peace.
What a man.
So this is some testing that if you are like us and you were at your wit's end and everything you had tried has failed and your clinic has basically said, we've helped you all we can, there's really nothing more we can do, you're just a, quote, tough case, end quote.
Ugh, that makes me so frustrated.
I just hate that. But this is going to be something you'll want to look into if all of that is true for you. Another thing I want to talk about, and this is the last thing, is sperm DNA fragmentation analysis. Now, I alluded to this earlier and I kind of touched on it a bit, but those preliminary semen analyses are not looking for fragmentations in the DNA. So this is a simple sperm analysis. So a man will provide his sample, and what they're going to do, they actually have 3 or 4 ways of actually looking at the DNA of the sperm, and I won't bore you with the sciencey details, but they are basically looking at the integrity of the DNA of the sperm. So they're looking at the number of little nicks or breakages in the DNA.
Oh, when I heard integrity, I thought like they locked him in a room with a £5 note on the table. And then they left the room to see if they stole it. Yeah, the £5.
Yeah, that might be one of the ways.
Yeah, we don't know. We're not there, right?
Right.
We don't know what they do.
They would have to shrink that £5 note down
Maybe
really small.
Maybe sperm has its own currency. like semen bucks or
Right.
sticky dollars.
Okay.
I don't know.
Anyway, what I was saying was there are many factors that can lead to DNA fragmentation in the sperm. So, oxidative stress, there's environmental factors like UV light, also cell phone radiation. So, gentlemen, if you're putting your cell phone in your pocket next to your dingleberries,
Stop calling them dingleberries.
get it out of there
Yeah.
and put it on your desk.
Yeah.
Put it in
Mine
your back
sits
pocket.
in my office on my desk on a charger all the
Yeah.
time. Just sits there.
Yeah, and stop putting your laptop on your D&Bs,
On
guys.
your Frankenbeans.
Okay?
Yeah.
Stop that.
It's so difficult not to do that.
Not only does it, like, expose your D&Bs to radiation, but it also heats them up, which is another cause. It's like it could injure your sperm.
No one likes hot D&Bs, right?
No, sweaty.
Sweaty D&Bs.
And in this heat...
Goodness me. It'd be like a stew down there.
Gross. So, sperm DNA fragmentation can be improved somewhat. I've heard of some cases where the DNA fragmentation was so bad that years of supplements and lifestyle change and things didn't really help it very much. But I have heard, to the contrary, some really great things about, lifestyle modification. So if you're smoking, stop.
Just stop. It's the year 2019.
Stop smoking.
Come on.
Gosh.
We've all done it, right?
Stop it.
When I was drunk in the club, sometimes someone would give me a cigarette. I'd puff that bad boy, right? I'd puff that bad boy. We've all done it.
No.
Someone passes the douchey to the left-hand side. We have a little toke. We've all done it. But it is the year 2019, and if you're dead serious about kids,
Stop it.
Stop it.
Stop it right now.
You slap that cigarette or do be out of their hand.
Right. Also, diet changes are really key in sperm DNA fragmentation repair. Also, supplements that are high in antioxidants are vital. Mm-hmm. So this issue can also be helped with reproductive assistance like IVF.
There you go.
That's pretty much all I wanted to cover in this episode. I didn't want to bore you with just a list of things. I kind of wanted to pull things that I knew the most about. And really, in my research, I'm not finding much more supplementary information as far as testing is concerned.
It's all very surface level, isn't it?
If you know of any tests that I did not cover today, please slide into my DMs.
Nice. We did miss the testicles.
Oh, that's a key test.
Oh
my God.
He went there, didn't he?
Yeah, please slide into my DMs at Operation Baby Bump on Instagram and tell me, because I love to learn and I love to have information filed away, because I do often get questions from people and I don't know all the answers. I just know what I've been through and can really speak to those things. And so I hope that this helped you in some way. If you have any questions, let me know. Yeah, so I hope you enjoyed it.
Yeah.
No, that was a lot. It was a lot of talk about vaginas, uteruses.
Uteri?
Uteri?
Is that the plural?
Plural?
Uteri.
Testicles and D's.
D's.
So we're going to wrap this up.
Like, if you don't want a baby, you should always wrap it up.
Exactly. But I'm sure that the people listening are not wrapping it up.
If you are the wrong audience.
Right.
If
but
you are
we are going to wrap it up.
We are going to wrap this up.
We're going to wrap this up right now. Thanks for listening, guys. I'm Candace.
And I'm Daniel.
Night.
Night. Ta-ra.
Bye-bye.